and welcome to a very special edition of The Big Fight, coming to you from San Francisco in California. For a long time there's been an urban legend, a myth if you like, certainly a perception that Indians tend to do much better outside India. They're not that successful in India, but you take them to the United States, you take them outside, and suddenly, bang, they're making a success of their life. Is that really true? And if it is true, what's the reason that makes it true? And if it's not true, where has that myth really come from? And we have an absolutely spectacular panel joining us here in San Francisco to take us through all aspects of that. Let me start by introducing somebody who you don't really want me to introduce you, do you?
You must.
Okay. Anil Kapoor, Mr. India, has now become Mr. California as well. You've really made the big change, you know, of somebody coming out here and the impact you made with Slumdog Millionaire and then with 24. It's been you've really done wonders, Anil, and we're going to be getting you to talk, take you through all the lessons that you've got from that. Thank you so much, Anil Kapoor, for joining us. Gurbaksh Chahal is probably one of the most successful Indian entrepreneurs out here. He started, what was it, Click Agents at the age of 16 or something like that, and you'd sold it for millions and set up a second company and sold that for hundreds of millions as well at a really young age. And I think Oprah called you the most eligible bachelor in the United States, or words to that effect, Gurbaksh. So it's great to have you with us. It's great to have you with us. Seema Patel came here she was born in Surat in India, came here at the age of 17, helped set up one of the largest lodging and hospitality chains here in America. We'll be getting you to share some of the experiences that you have with that. Our close friend and partner, Atul Singh, the CEO of Coca-Cola India, actually made the reverse journey as well. He came out here, he thought it was a one-way ticket, went back to India and has made a great success in that. So is that something, Atul, that you think a lot of other people are going to be doing as well? We'll be fascinated to get your lessons from that. Chris Kuehling, it's great to have you with us from Dish. One of the most powerful networks for the South Asian community and people of Indian origin here in the United States. We'd be fascinated to get some of your lessons as well. Sailesh Rao was, we all knew him really well in India as the person who was very influential in taking Google places in India. He is the Vice President now international of Twitter, and we hope India is going to be really important for you there. Sailesh will be getting your words on that. And last but by no means the least, somebody whom we all know as perhaps the face of Indian entrepreneurship here in America, Sabir Bhatia, the person who set up Hotmail, of course, and made an absolutely fantastic success of it. Thank you all so much, and I have to say, it's really a privilege to have all of you together on one platform. Just this introduction has taken so much time. Should I go in reverse direction? Sabir, what I said to start with, are Indians more successful overseas than they are in India?
I think in some areas, like in the area of innovation, certainly, you find that people over here do well, and that's just purely a result of better infrastructure and support systems for entrepreneurs in a place like California, or especially in Silicon Valley. And there's a lot of history too. I mean, my story of entrepreneurship actually began at Stanford. I came here to do a PhD at Stanford, and I took a course called Business for Electrical Engineers. And in that course we had the likes of Steve Jobs and Scott McNealy and Fred Gibbons and Vinod Khosla come and talk to us, and that completely changed my perspective. And after taking that course, I decided I wanted to be an entrepreneur. So entrepreneurs in this part of the world are looked up to, just like actors are looked up to in Mumbai or in Hollywood. So I think there's a culture of entrepreneurship here that goes back to the days of Hewlett-Packard, which is almost 40, 50 years ago. And we just simply don't have that culture in India, even today. I mean, there are entrepreneurs, but they have been successful in doing, in replicating businesses, the likes of Airtel or what Reliance has done. They've not created anything new, whereas all of Silicon Valley depends on creating new products where none existed before. And it's very intellectually driven, high in IP.
Okay.
And I think that may be the reason why
So
Silicon
a
Valley is more
culture of
successful.
innovation in Silicon Valley that you think is really the reason why Indians
Not
do
just
so
in
well
Silicon Valley, I think in all of the United States.
in all of the United States. Gulbaksh, do you agree with that?
I mean, I started my journey when I was 16, and seeing that 14 years ago when I started it, the innovation of India and the internet was probably fairly new there. And I think when you look back right now, it's probably the best time to be an entrepreneur in India, just because there's a lot of things that are happening to the Indian economy that are going to create so much opportunity. You got over 100 million people that have internet connections. You have the most mobile subscriptions in terms of users there, and it's just going to continue to grow. You don't really have that growth right now in America, so if you're an entrepreneur and you're in India right now and you're doing anything, you actually have a major advantage right now. So I wouldn't say just because the successes of America are always going to be only American. I think the internet's kind of taken the boundary away, where the boundaries no longer exist. It's all about if you have your passion, if you want to execute, if you want to actually build something, you can be in any geography. And that's what you need the most.
So the support system which Samir was talking about is getting a bit more broad-based. You can make a success of yourself in India.
Yeah, and there's a lot of companies in India that are actually making that change and are actually innovating. I mean, I've met a lot of entrepreneurs that actually want to make and are going to make some very successful big internet companies.
Atul, you made the reverse transition. Was
Yeah,
that part
I
of the
actually
reason for
came
it?
to the U.S. in 1981 with a one-way ticket, and at that time we said, look, there was no hope in India, and we wanted to just stay outside. But I went back after having spent over 20 plus years. Been back for the last 7 years, and it's been fun. I mean, it's been a great journey. For our company, I can speak of, we've had 24 consecutive quarters of growth, and 17 of them been double digit. And as Gulbaksh said, when you look at the opportunity in India, when you look at, apart from the billion people, I think what's exciting is there are going to be 65 plus cities with over 1 million people. So the tremendous amount of urbanization is going to lead to a lot of opportunities. There's going to be over 200 million new teenagers coming up in the next 10 to 15 years.
So a lot of the opportunities are going to be there.
It's huge opportunities, I think. And also, I mean, I spent time in China, and I've seen, I spent 5 years in China before moving back to India and saw the growth that happened there. I think India's on the verge of exponential growth. That's the potential. Now, whether we capitalize on that potential or not is yet to be seen, but clearly the potential is there.
Okay. Anil, let me get your perspective on this, because you're somebody who was already wildly successful in India, and then you came out here to make a mark as well.
Yeah, I in a way, I agree with Gulbaksh what he says, that like today, everything is blurred. The world is shrinking. You can be anywhere in the world and you can make success. And so when, of course, I got this opportunity, I was not that I really planned it, that I would get this kind of exposure, this whatever little success I've got over here. I was just happened to be at the right time, at the right place, and of course I was always doing things which were out of the box. So when I got this opportunity, a lot of people encouraged me that why don't you settle in LA, and why don't you buy a house in LA, or stay in America. And I said, I don't have to. I don't need to. I can stay where I'm staying. I'm in Mumbai, and today I'm in touch on Twitter or Facebook or Skype or email, or there's so many flights going up and down. So I can just do whatever I can, like if there is an audition, I can audition from Mumbai today. I have auditioned from Mumbai. So anywhere in the world I can be, and I can take my whatever passion which I have is films and entertainment, and take it. So it's not necessary that I have to be here to make a success.
Okay, so the opportunities can come to you irrespective of where you are, even if you are in India.
Yeah.
Seema, would you agree with that, or would you say that your sort of a journey would not necessarily have been possible in India?
I think we have tremendous opportunities in India at present, because the middle class is growing. They're traveling more. For example, this year Brazil and India were the largest travel markets for United States. So for our industry, there's tremendous opportunity in India, and we can build more hotels. There's shortage of hotels actually in India. The supply is not meeting the demand. So there's a great opportunity for us in India and anywhere in the world for that matter.
Okay, Shailesh?
I think the key thing is a willingness and an ability to take risk, because it's hard to do something new, it's hard to innovate, if you don't feel comfortable taking risk. And it's certainly the hallmark of Silicon Valley. It's a hallmark of innovation in the United States, is not just a willingness to take risk, but almost celebrating the taking of risk and celebrating failure, because it's the attempt, it's the trying something new, which is valued and respected. And what I started to see in India, certainly over the years that I was there, was an increasing tolerance, permission, a culture that allowed really smart, young, energetic people with big dreams to take risks. Whether it was in the digital space, in the television industry, look at the proliferation of television channels in India. Those are all innovative startups attempting to do something on a pretty grand scale. So I think when you have a culture in which your family, your friends, your colleagues, your mentors support your dreams and allow you to take risks, you're naturally going to see growth and innovation. And I'm fairly optimistic in the trend of what I saw in India, and I think it's continuing today.
Chris, let me get you in now.
At least the last couple of times I've been to India, I feel tremendous energy, drive, excitement that I haven't seen as much here, particularly in the last 5 years or so. But when I go to Mumbai or Hyderabad in particular, there's just this very intense energy is the best way to describe it, and drive for people to succeed. Here in the States, my exposure is a little more limited. I look at the subscribers we have on Dish. For the most part, the South Asian subscribers we have are very highly educated. They're very affluent, and for the most part, for those two reasons, have been very successful. And they are some of our best customers. They buy a very expensive American package of programming. They also buy an Indian package of programming. They may spend $100, $120, $130 with us, and that's not a factor to them at all. It's just not a big deal. And so the demographic of the South Asians we deal with, like I said, are highly educated and have been very successful here. But when I go to India, I really see that excitement now, which has been really fun to see.
All right, so let me just try and sum up what I think everyone is saying. Yes, there is obviously growth in India. Yes, there's a young demographic in India which will continue to do well. And yes, there is a growing sense of assertion, a growing sense of confidence, a growing ability to take risks. But Sabir, let me come back to the point that you started with. What about the environment? What about the infrastructure? What about the corruption? What about the electricity that's going to fail? What about the traffic jams? I mean, you know what the counterpoint to that would be. Is that something which you think would still hold back somebody who really wants to chase his or her dreams?
In some areas, I mean, not in all areas, because the good news about creation of IP is that you require smart people that can overcome all of these so-called shortcomings, right? But having said that, I think there is also, I mean, if you want to do anything in, for example, the telecom sector, I mean, there are just way too many restrictions in India. So the government is a hindrance in some areas. In many cases, it's over-regulated. But in general, and then if you want to start an internet or a mobile company, you need reliable data centers. So what ends up happening is all of the entrepreneurs in India have to rent space at an Amazon or a US data center, and that kind of, in many times, makes the experience of doing something, far off, far away. So there is great opportunity, no question about it, but there still are shortcomings that we need to overcome. And I think the last bit is the mindset of the people, which is changing, but it isn't completely. The tide hasn't completely changed to becoming more risk-taking. And you see this in the venture capitalists in India. Most of them want to invest in growth. You've already made some profit. We want to put money in your company so that you can grow this 10x, as opposed to taking a risk with a great idea. So unfortunately, that base layer of ideas don't get funded. And it will change over time, but as of the current moment, I think India is way behind.
Okay, so let me just come to some of the challenges that Sabir was talking about. Shailesh, you want to comment on those? Are some of those handicaps something that at the end of the day will really prevent a flourishing of talent and the Silicon Valley type experience?
Look, I think the obstacles are real. We've all seen them. I think we all talk about, for those who are familiar, live in India, have grown up in India, know that the excitement about India and the level of frustration we feel is because we all know the potential of the country and we're frustrated at the things that hold it back. And I think also people know that private sector success or the success of entrepreneurs in India are often despite the conditions, in spite of the regulations, in spite of, not because of enlightened government policy or things.
But that's not necessarily the case elsewhere either. I mean, you look at, even if you look at a lot of the success stories in America, it's not exactly the same as China. It's not that the government is necessarily directing something. God knows there's dysfunctional government in the US also, particularly in recent times.
No question, you could look at places like Singapore, there are other countries, and there are smaller cities and towns that do intelligent things in terms of creating investment zones.
Democracies often will not make the right decisions. That's one of the perils of being a democracy.
But I would just add, I don't think, I think entrepreneurs are the kinds of people who don't look at those things and aren't stopped by those things. They find ways to fight through, persist, and succeed. So I would agree with you that most entrepreneurs who are real entrepreneurs don't see those conditions and stop from pursuing their dreams.
Okay. Gurbaksh, if you had to look back at if you had to look at India right now, would you say, look, that's really the place I want to go in and take some bets? And yes, I know there's going to be red tape, and yes, I know there are going to be problems, and maybe the electricity will go and I need to get a generator, but I think that's where I'd like to make a bet.
Absolutely. Just because, I actually see a lot of U.S. people going to India to start startups. And there is, albeit not that many, but there's been very much successes in the Indian market. Look at Flipkart as an example, Make My Trip. There's a lot of companies that started in India that have been very successful, and other people have decided to invest even more in a very big way. So I don't think it has anything to do with India and government and all this stuff. It just has to do with one thing, and that is that if the culture of India can foster innovation, and it can foster entrepreneurship, and it can foster risk, and traditionally it hasn't, but I think that's going to change, because when you see so much growth in the economy, in the middle class, everything rising, the opportunity is right there.
Is that going to happen? Because I do tend to agree with Samir to some extent that you're not necessarily going to get a state which is going to back you. You're not necessarily going to get enlightened government suddenly that's going to do all the right things.
You don't need that.
You don't need that.
You don't need that. Well, you probably need that in industries that you need the government support. But if you're looking at just the internet and the way the proliferation of the internet has allowed the change of media, the change of everything, social communications have kind of inspired people to break boundaries. That's all you really need as an entrepreneur. You need that passion, you need that idea, you need that execution, and you can make that happen. And that has nothing to do with having the government saying, hey, you can do this.
All right. Atul? Because we've heard a lot, frankly, in India in the last year or so as to how it's impossible to do business. So, I think industry has been really, really negative for a while.
Yeah, clearly we have issues. Let's not wish them away. But I think the opportunities outweigh the issues that we have to deal with day to day. So, for example, in our business, our beverages taste great when they're chilled and ice cold, but there's no electricity in half of India, and in several parts where there is, for several hours in a day, you don't have electricity. So we've innovated with solar coolers. So that's forced us to say, look, if you don't have electricity, how can you chill product without electricity? So let's innovate with solar coolers where you have panels on a roof of a Kirana store with a little cooler, and whenever there's electricity, it's enough power to chill product for the rest of the day. We've actually exported that technology to Africa and a lot of other countries around the world. So within those issues, we've found solutions. And I think that's what a lot of entrepreneurs and companies in India are doing, is how do you, given the scope, given the opportunity, how do you capture those opportunities? Sometimes it's slower than in other countries, but I think you can't walk away from India given the tremendous opportunity that exists out there.
Chris, but for, let's say, a Western businessman or a venture capitalist that Samir was talking about, when you're looking at an opportunity in India, or there's some bright young people who come and say, look, there's stuff that you want to do, would there be always this factor which would hold you back, saying, well, all right, we know it's growing and we know it's a young, dynamic population, but, what about electricity and it goes away?
Right.
You could have one of the worst blackouts. Would that really hold you back?
I think that's definitely a concern. I think there's the sort of the regulatory or bureaucracy concerns that you may have there that you don't have in this country. But You balance that with just the sheer opportunity that's there. For one thing, just the number of people are there. So you look at the media, the television industry. In the U.S., that's basically a mature industry. Everyone who's going to buy paid television pretty much has subscribed. And for the first time last quarter, the number of people paying for television actually declined in this country. Where you look at India, a population of what, 1.1 billion people, and 100 million so far have television. That is incredible opportunity there. And the entrepreneurs that can go in there, come up with new television channels or award-winning television channels, get more distribution. There's incredible growth, I think, that's going to happen in India in the media business alone that we're not going to see in this country. A lot of ways, there's much more opportunity there now than there is here.
Okay, Seema, let me ask it to you straight up. You are 17. If you were 17 years old right now, would you want to come to the US? Or would you want to stay in India and try and build a hotel business there?
Well, now there are a lot of opportunities, but when I was 17, there weren't that many. And one thing we
so
haven't
you're saying-
discussed is cultural obstacles. I mean, for a girl to grow up in a family where she's not, I hadn't even visited a bank or a post office till I was 16. I didn't speak fluent English till I was 16. So the opportunities were not there. But today, there are tremendous opportunities for girls. Girls are doing amazing things in India. Women are progressing at the highest level. So the things have
if it
changed.
was today, you think that you might well be tempted to stay on?
I would, because there are more opportunities now. But at the same time, I think we're not discussing the cultural issues are still there in India. There are enough conservative families that would have those, values that they would not let the girls step ahead of the guys or the boys in the family. And I think those, we don't talk about it as much because it doesn't affect maybe a lot of the people here, but it does affect a woman.
Yeah, I'm afraid you are in a bit of a minority. And
I speak for thousands of women in my industry who came in the 60s and 70s. Our industry started way before the high-tech industry in America. We came in the 60s and 70s and became hotel, motel, patel, with just one word. And we worked hard, and there are thousands of women who work in the hotel industry, and they probably weren't allowed to do that if they stayed back home. And the opportunities were there for us here, despite not having enough education. That was not the issue. Where at home, maybe if I went to get a job, my resume would first, somebody would look at the education and not my ability to do my job.
Anav, what would be the advice you'd be giving your son?
Well, I think he advises me. But these days,
that normally happens, but on the rare moment that he might want to take your advice.
Obviously the mindset is completely changing, especially the younger generation, and of course I can talk about my children, of course their friends when I speak to them. See, there was a tendency of playing safe in India. Most of the people would play safe. Copy something, copy piracy, and all kind of things. But now the whole mindset of this younger generation, which quite a few of them have studied over here, and now they have settled. They believe that it's better that we are in India. Is like my daughters and my son. They just want to do original work. They just don't want to do anything which is not original. They said no matter what happens, it might take us 5 years, 4 years. We just don't want to copy anything. We don't want to copy any English film. We don't want to copy any, anything. We just want to do original work, and original is going to take time. So that's the basic mindset of the younger generation today. They want to do original work. They don't want to copy. So that's looking fantastic, actually.
All right. And Gurbaksh, are there challenges that you think could also come in places like the United States? So the ride that, let's say, Indians and others have had in places like the US for a long period of time, do you think there could be challenges to that as these economies start to slow and other problems come up? I mean, you just launched the Be Proud Foundation, and was that because of concerns like this and the recent massacre that we saw, of course, as being perhaps the worst?
A few weeks ago when that tragedy happened, I was shocked. And I was shocked because, I faced intense racism for the first 18 years growing up in America. And I didn't think that I'd wake up and I'd be 30 years old and people would be getting killed simply because of their appearance. So one of the reasons I started Be Proud was just I realize that no matter the fact that America's progressed, no matter the fact that we got over 300 million people here, we still have to go ahead and do a better job in accepting each other. And we have to do a better job in creating awareness of who we are and being proud to be different. And if we can create more awareness campaigns and let the average Joe know that, hey, you know what, this is what a Sikh person looks like, and that's fine, and you shouldn't kill him because he looks that way. And if we need to go and accept whoever we are, whether we're white, black, or whatever ethnicity you are, so we can actually grow again as a nation. And I think that the last few years maybe weren't the right for this country, but I'm a big believer in America. I'm a proud American as well, and I think that launching this type of awareness is just going to go ahead and hopefully better the lives of everyone.
Sabir, do you see some of those problems being on the ascendant in America?
It's unfortunate what happened, obviously, but in all the years that I've been here, I've never faced any such problems over here. I think in general there are issues of slowing growth, like what Chris mentioned in terms of mature industries. But I think there still is such a large groundswell of innovation over here that there will always be new things to do and develop. I don't think we've run out of ideas over here.
Gurbaksha, what will come in on that?
I just want to say that I think you got lucky, because that's the first time I think that I've heard that, because having been an entrepreneur, I mean, think about it, I dropped out of high school when I was 16. I sold my first company at 18. I started my another one at 21, and I had a great exit at 25. But nobody really trusted me, because there's a stereotype. And I think it's gotten better, mainly because there's successes like Mark Zuckerberg now, where you can be young and you don't need that Ivy League education to go ahead and prove yourself. But discrimination, to say that it's gone away, is thinking and living in a fantasy world. And I think that what we have to do is help break that stereotype, because we want to be able to give everyone an opportunity. And I mean, I faced it in 2 of my startups. Maybe not the 3rd time, because maybe people believe me now, but...
was that because of your age, or was it because of other reasons?
Well, I think it was because of appearance, education, look, and you know, there's a trust factor. And I think things have evolved because now people have accepted that the younger people can make a difference, and hopefully appearance isn't that big of an issue in the Silicon Valley, but to largely say, we're talking about the United States of America here. That is the problem that we have to do. If we've fostered a culture that accepts people and accepts appearances in this Bay Area, we should use this foundation and this culture and spread this across America, because that's what it's going to take for this country to go ahead and stay as the best country in the world.
And you know, I did not say that there's no discrimination. I just said I haven't faced any.
That's why I said you got lucky.
Okay, you got lucky. Seema, I mean, I have to say that in probably the United States will be one of the places which is the most open, relatively speaking, especially in recent years. But would you agree with him that there
I
is
would,
discrimination,
because
and that it could well be on the rise again?
I don't know if it could be on the rise again, but I know there is issues out there in the community. You are in the most diverse place in America, which is California and Bay Area. But if you go out into the rural areas or other states, I mean, even in California, when I developed my first hotel along with my husband in the early 90s, we were subject to racism. So we've experienced a few times, and you just overcome those issues. I mean, the opportunities are so great. Like he said, there's a groundswell of opportunities here, and you just overcome those issues. But education is the key. I mean, like he said, more connecting with the community, educating them on our culture, and more openness. I think that solves the problem.
Abdul, I do sometimes hear this from people who've gone back to India, having spent some time outside. At the end of the day, that's home. You know, it sort of ties in a bit with this. Is that something that you felt that outside you're never completely at home, or is that not the case? And I guess it also depends on where you are.
And also the type of person you are. You know, I've been fortunate. I've lived in the U.S. for several years. I lived in Europe, lived in Africa, lived in China, and now in India. So clearly, when you're moving around that much, it's great to be back home, right? After all these years. But when I was in the U.S., I thoroughly enjoyed it. I mean, you know, this was as much home as Delhi is. Yes, you have a lot of family back back in India. So you miss your family, and I'm sure those of you who live outside, you kind of, and that's why we would always, love the Bollywood movies, and now that Indian TV is here, I'm sure people are going to get even that much more closer. But people, if you've chosen to go out in the first place, like all of us did, when we were young, some people, their parents took them out, but a lot of us made our own choices. We knew what we were getting into. So the US was as much home as India is today.
Shailesh, let me get you another, and I think the reason why this is important is the theme that we're talking about, do Indians do better at home or abroad? I have to say, when I was here in California and I finished my education, everyone in my batch, or every second person, was thinking about moving to America. It was the year 1991. India was at that time a complete mess. There was insurgencies in 3 states. The economy had shut down. Rajiv Gandhi had just been assassinated. Our gold was being pledged abroad. When I took the decision to go back, it was, I think, as much for the reason that's home as anything else. So do you think that at the end of the day will be a major factor?
The sense of home. I think it's more a sense of hope. So I think one of the defining...
So India's home and hope now.
And hope. I think both. One of the defining aspects of the American experience is this sense that tomorrow will be better than today, and that we're all contributing towards that, and we have some element of control and influence in making tomorrow better than today. So if you talk about today's current economic environment, you can look at it and say, wow, it's sort of depressing. There's so many negative things going on in the US. But let's just see, because this is yet another test in sort of the American experience. And I think most people are confident that the energy, the effort, that culture here will allow people to innovate and grow and make tomorrow better than today. I would say that I saw very much that same spirit of confidence and hope in India. And I maybe have a more limited view than people who spent decades and had lived all their life in India. But for me, as somebody who's been traveling to India for over 3 decades, that sense of hope and optimism, particularly in the younger generation, for me, feels very new. And I still remember in the mid-90s when I was talking to a cousin and I asked her that basic question that anybody would ask: are you planning on going to study overseas? Are you applying to go attend college? And she said, no, why would I do that? All the opportunity is here.
Well, now actually the major reason that people say that is it's almost impossible to get into an Indian university. It's impossible to get into university overseas. You know the cutoffs this year are in Delhi University 97%. Who gets 97%? People have to go abroad, they won't get into college.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Chris, before I come to Anil, just related to what he says, there's this sense of pessimism also about the future of the United States itself. Do you think that's a bit misplaced?
To speak generally, always has hope in America. I think we're going through difficult economic times, but I think everyone's still, I don't think it's a panic. I think people feel like this is a period we need to get through, but there will be light at the end of the tunnel. That's just been the history of this country, and I don't think that's going to change. I do think you come to certain areas in the country, you come to the Bay Area, and to me it does not feel nearly as affected as when I go to the Midwest and other places which have more traditional industries. Here it's all built on innovation, it's built on ideas, and it's entrepreneurs who have been very successful here. All comes out of Silicon Valley. That excitement is still here. To me, this has the same excitement that I was describing earlier when I go to Hyderabad and I see what's going on there. Very similar. The rest of the country, and maybe New York's accepted as well, but elsewhere in the United States, I do feel like very much in this sort of a lull period. But I don't think people are giving up.
All right, and then I want to turn to the audience now and get some views from them. But before that, not that many people from the Indian film industry, for example, were able to break through here in Hollywood before you did. And was that to do with some of the factors that Gulbaksh is talking about, or are there other reasons? They just weren't talented enough or whatever.
Of course, things are changing, but I agree that there is a certain stereotype of, casting, when you want to cast, so you have to fight it. You have to fight it. And
was it difficult for you to fight it?
No, it was not difficult. You just say no to those roles which are offered to you, And so I was fortunate that, all the 3 opportunities which I got, Slumdog Millionaire, I played a successful host. Then I did 24, where I didn't play an Indian. I played a Middle Eastern president. So, and that also a positive character. And in 24, playing a positive character, anybody and everybody who met me says, are you the villain? Are you playing the bad guy? I said, no, I'm not playing the bad guy. I'm playing the good guy in 24. So it was kind of a cultural shock to a lot of people. So there is a certain, in the way the writers and the directors are looking at actors, they're looking differently. And of course, there's a long way to go. And that's what I'm going to do is try, obviously among the 5 films or 5 roles which come to me, 4 are the stereo Indians. So you say no to those 4 stereo Indian roles.
Does that mean you never want to play an Indian?
No, I want to play an Indian, but I don't want to play something which is very stereo, which is, which
Peter
is
Sellers, party type.
Yeah, those kind of, So that's what is, it is there, but we have to fight it, and it's going to take time, but I'm very hopeful.
All right, let me turn now to the audience. Let me see if we can get some questions or comments from anybody who wants to say something, just raise your hands. Right at the back there.
My question is, if there were one change in the business environment which you would like to see in India, what would that be?
Let me take one more comment. The lady there.
With the Anna Hazare movement that we hear so much about, I haven't heard anybody talk about corruption on the stage, and I'd be interested to know if you had any personal experiences dealing with that on the ground there. Thanks.
Okay, corruption and the one change that you'd like to see. Would corruption be the one change you'd like to see?
I think that's going to be a unanimous answer.
Get rid of the corruption.
At the moment, the only change.
And I think the two are kind of related. I think it's the one change you'd like to see is less of bureaucracy. And more bureaucracy directly means more corruption, really. It's and it's been proven time and time again, more bureaucracy there's more scope for corruption.
Atul, tell us, as somebody running a successful business in India, is this something that really bothers you or affects you from a day-to-day basis, corruption and bureaucracy?
I think, Coca-Cola operates in 202 countries.
And is India one of the most corrupt of all of them?
And so we've seen them all, as I say. But I think what you have to do is put your foot down, and if you are always on the right side of the law and don't break the rules, I think eventually people get it.
You're saying that you don't pay bribes in India,
We don't.
and you do not pander to corruption in India,
We don't.
and you can still survive.
Absolutely.
Are you in a minority on that?
Well, I don't know if you're in a minority, but there are a lot of companies. There are a lot of companies, a lot of multinational, a lot of Indian, very good Indian companies that don't break the law. And I think I would encourage people to follow the rules, and you'll be fine. Sometimes it's painful, but you withstand that pain, and you'll be okay.
Okay, Shailesh? I mean, companies like Twitter and Facebook and Google probably have another set of problems in India, trying to make sure the government doesn't censor you or switch you off every time somebody posts.
Well, but I would echo what Atul said, which is you are able, at all those companies, to my knowledge, certainly Google, having worked there, and Twitter now, are companies that have a very strong sense of ethics. And when I was at Google in India, I would be very proud to say that we operated consistently with the ethics of Google in India in equal measure to any other country in the world, despite what the general environment may be like. So it is possible, and the most important thing is to know that it's possible. Another thing I'd like to see is more celebration of true heroes like Narayan Murthy, like others who really came from not a background of privilege or a big industrial family name, but were able to build something from nothing, add value to society, create jobs, and really be role models for younger people.
Yeah.
So this is a question for Anil Kapoor. He and I go way back, so I have a liberty to ask this question. So Anil, great job with the Mission Impossible, where the beautiful, sexy woman slapped you. So the question I have, Anil, is how many times did she have to slap you before the director was happy with the take?
How many times did she slap you before the director said, I'm okay with that?
I think, that was my idea.
That she slaps you?
Yeah, she slaps me. Because I just felt that, and it was, the first take was okay. The first take. And because I said she's so beautiful and she's so attractive, she's so sexy. Even if she slaps me, I think I like it more.
Yeah. One more, let me see if I can get one more. Okay, yeah, the hand there. That's it.
You've got some major Coca-Cola and Twitter. How does a smaller company get into the Indian market? That's probably a challenge with the red tape starting from the local level all the way up. So how does a small company enter the Indian market?
it just comes down to if you have a great idea and it has borderless opportunities, you can basically launch in India now because there's so many different opportunities there that you can find. It's just finding the right people that you can trust, that share that vision, that share that passion, that you can execute on.
Seema, if you had to launch in India, would you be tempted to go the partnership route or try and do it on your own?
I would go to the partnership route because I'm almost afraid to start on my own because of the bureaucracy and the red tape. Being in this country for over 30 years and going back, it feels like I'm going to a foreign country, honestly. So I would need some support.
I'll just say I think there are lots of people in India, outside of India, who do business in India, who could be great resources, and I'm sure would be more than happy to help and share their experiences. It's now there's enough companies that have done it and done it successfully that can be a resource that for somebody new, they're sort of lucky that a lot of people have paved that path before them, and it's a matter of reaching out and connecting with those folks.
All right, before we end, I just like to perhaps get a very quick final thought from each of you. And to put this into some sort of context, just last week I did a very similar show on last week's Big Five, and I asked the audience whether they thought that in the next 10 to 15 years, India was going to emerge as one of the most successful countries in the world. I'll tell you what response I got from the audience there later, but let me first get your take on this. Sabir, on balance, positives, negatives taken together, for an Indian or for a young Indian there right now, somebody just passing out of college saying, should I try and make a go of it out here? This is the place where the opportunities are. Here is where I should stay and try and make a future for myself. Or should that person say, look, at the end of the day, the problems are too many. Let me try and find options elsewhere.
It's not a simple answer to that question because you could have asked me the same question 7 or 8 years ago. And 7 or 8 years ago, the promise of India was great. I mean, it was one of the BRIC countries growing. I think it has underperformed in the last 7 years. So the last 7 years don't give people that much confidence. It really should be growing today at 10, 11, 12%. Whereas you see the results it's growing at 6%. And that's because of a lot of short-sightedness of maybe our politicians, maybe our system, maybe our democracy. But things like what the government is doing to the likes of Vodafone are just plain dumb. For lack of a better word.
Well, they might be rolling that back. So
I hope so, but it's so obvious. If the Supreme Court has passed a judgment, you want to challenge the highest court of law in your country. That means you don't have sanctity for law. Bottom line is that. So I think India has not achieved its potential in the last 6-7 years. 7 years ago there was great promise. There will always be great promise because of the growth. But, the past 7 years are not very encouraging.
Shailesh, there'll always be great promise, but it won't necessarily be translated into action.
I see pockets of optimism and hope, and I've seen great examples of success, entrepreneurial success. But when I look at the overall picture, I'd have to agree with Sabir that I think there's some more work to be done to make it a land of opportunity for everybody in equal measure. And so I hope that in the next...
But on balance, your advice to a person in college, stay at home and make the most of the opportunities or go abroad?
It's a very difficult question, but I would say that it's worth staying, it's worth pursuing the opportunity. I think the opportunities are there, there's no question. My frustration is that things should be better, faster, and more.
Chris?
I guess my sort of gut feel, and I have no statistics to base this on, but my gut feel is there is enormous potential, there's enormous drive, as I mentioned earlier, entrepreneurism in India. I don't feel like it's exploded. It's like, to me, right on the verge, and I think in another couple of years you're gonna really feel it or really see it happen. But that's just more my gut feel from having traveled there and interacted with a lot of the television channels.
All right, Atul?
Well, our industry, FMCG businesses, we're very bullish in India. In fact, we just announced a $5 billion commitment to India as a system over the next 6, 7, 8 years. So for us, the glass is more than half full, tremendous upside potential given the demographic dividend. So, you know, I'd say yes.
So, relating to the overall theme of whether Indians do better at home or abroad, your advice to a youngster, stay at home or go abroad?
Yeah, and you know, when we go out interviewing people, whether it's the IIMs or the XLRIs and in the other schools, ISB, etc., that's what the students are telling us. They want to stay back in India. They look at lots of opportunity there, and you know, but like you said, you know, those who don't get the 95 or 97%, they find it very difficult to get into a very good school. And I think that's the opportunity. Is we need a lot more.
They can go and study abroad and then come back.
And then they come back, and a lot of them say that that's what they want to do. But separately, of course, we need a lot better schools, a lot more good schools, and I think that's going to solve some of the other problems.
Seema, final thoughts from you?
I think there are a lot of opportunities in India for youngsters. It's one of the most educated workforce in the world, and but India has a long way to go. I echo Sailesh. Every time I go, I feel the frustration that it's not fast enough. It's going to get there, but it's going to take time, and it can't be soon enough for us. I mean, we want it to progress.
We'd like it to move faster.
We'd
like it to move faster. But
I think it depends on vertical, and if the person has the patience. And I mean, I remember when I was 10 years old and I went to India for the first time, and we looked at the TV and there was only 2 channels, and I thought the TV was broken. And now you go and there's basically hundreds of channels, and media is basically proliferated, and that opportunity, you know, happened in the last decade or so, right? And in the same context, if you have a will, there's a way, and you can make it happen. But I think that one of the reasons that makes America successful is that we have this innate desire to be impatient, to desire us to continue to be successful. And in India, you need a lot of patience. So if you have that patience and you have a great idea and you have a great vertical, the opportunity and the sky's the limit.
All right. Arnold, final thoughts from you.
Yeah, of course, there are problems. There is, you know, the biggest problem is bureaucracy, corruption. But as Atul said, that the opportunities the opportunities are much more than the problems. And of course, and I agree with Sabir that last few years India has underperformed. It has created even I expected it to perform much better. But I'm an optimistic. I'm hopeful. And but there is the last 2 years, you know, with the political situation, and you know, I see the 2014 election. There are going to be more major problems. So, you know, I don't know if any majority party is going to win the election, and you know, and that's also one of the problems. Is there are politicians, there are leaders who want to take want to move fast and take decisions, but because of the political system, they cannot. That's the.
But you know, we blame the system, but if I could just get your reaction, maybe another couple of reactions to this. You know, to the theme of why do Indians do better abroad than at home, is it also their own attitude? Because you could have the same people who, when driving in Delhi, will throw trash on the side of the road, not obey any lights, go straight through a red light, behave in a completely rotten manner, and then they'll come to California and they'll be absolutely fine. They never think of taking plastic and throwing it out of the window. So there's also some way the way Indians behave in India and they behave outside.
No, I
mean, some do it outside also, which is terrible.
No, yes, there is. I totally. It's obviously it's, you know, because it's the environment and it's the whole culture and the values, and besides that, it's the, you know, the infrastructure and the way, you know, we've been brought up, and, you know, chalta attitude, you know, chalega, you know, that kind of.
So chalega, you say chalega in India, but you don't do chalega outside.
Yeah, that's what it is, and I feel there should be the judiciary system, and you know,
so
the laws.
You're nodding your head, you agree with that?
Yeah, the laws.
The way some Indians behave in India, they would not behave when they went overseas.
I think, you know, I think the environment around you matters. The culture that's and the standards that are set around you influence you.
Yeah.
We're not independent of that. We're affected by that. And I think the best you can do is just try to conduct yourself in a way that you feel proud, and hopefully enough people do that, you know, those things change.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of The Big Fight from California. It's the first one we've ever done in California, but it's not going to be the last. That's the promise I made. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.